fourth grade friends, and welcome to my classroom. Kitchen. It is an active kitchen with an active family, so who knows what will happen while we're sitting here, but that's quite all right. I wanted the space to be able to show you what we're doing. I'm going to introduce you to our super exciting project that all of the fourth grade is going to be doing together this week. So every single one of you fourth graders will complete one of these. We are going to create what is called a Geo City. Now, our Geo Cities are going to be a two-dimensional overview map of a city. Now, let me show you here the couple of things that you're going to want to make sure you're familiar with, a couple of terms that you're going to want to be familiar with as we go into this. On this page here, you've got parallel lines, remember, are two sets of lines that never cross. And perpendicular lines, if you remember, are lines that cross at exactly a 90-degree angle. Some other vocabulary that you're going to want to be familiar with to be able to adequately complete this project is acute and obtuse angles. Now, remember, the perpendicular crossed at 90 degrees. That made that exact box of a corner. Acute angles are cute little angles. Any angle that's smaller than that 90 degrees would be an acute angle. Obtuse angles are angles that are larger than the 90 degrees. So perpendicular lines made that 90 degree, that box of a corner. Acute is smaller than that, and obtuse is larger than that. Okay. We then move into just a couple of our shapes. You've got Scalene Triangle, which is a triangle where all three sides are a different length. Okay. This compares to the other triangle you're going to need, an equilateral triangle, where all three sides are the exact same length. So scalene is all three different lengths, where equilateral is all three the same lengths. Okay. And then we have the last couple of shapes we need to be familiar with, Pentagon and Quadrilateral. Now, a pentagon is any five-sided shape. The Pentagon in Washington, D.C. is called that because it is a five-sided building. And then quadrilateral, you can use any of the quadrilaterals. I mean, in this specifically, we've got square, parallelogram, trapezoid, and rectangle. Okay, so you can use any of those shapes when it tells you to refer to a quadrilateral. Now, if we go over our Geo Maps Checklist, okay, our Geo Maps Checklist tells us all of the things that we need to have in our city. You want to have two streets that are perpendicular, so you should have at least two rows that make that 90-degree angle. Two streets that are parallel, so you should have two roads that, if they could continue on forever, they would never cross. And then you need to have two streets that create an obtuse angle, so that bigger than 90 degrees, and two streets that create that acute angle, or smaller than the 90 degrees. And then it talks about the specifics for your buildings. One building should be shaped as an equilateral triangle. 5 buildings should be shaped as a quadrilateral. You can do any of the quadrilaterals. You'll see in mine, I chose to do all 4 of them and then an extra one of them. But you need to have 5 quadrilaterals. You can do any of them, all of them squares, all of them rectangles, or one of each and then one more. You need to have one building as a scalene triangle, so where all 3 sides are a different length, and one building as a pentagon. So you need to have all of those shapes that we just reviewed in your thing. Now, all of these papers that I'm showing to you are papers that you have copies of when you picked up your packets. Okay. From there, you need to refer to this page. Now, this one right here is blank. I purposefully kept a blank one to show you, but I have already done this step. This stage is mapping out your city. So you're doing a draft before you get to the final copy. Okay, so we're gonna have a draft before we get to the final. And you'll notice something that I didn't do when I created my draft, which I should do right now. We'll call it Prattville. Okay, so I've created a draft here of Prattville. And as I draw it onto my thing, you'll specifically kind of see the order I went in and how I made sure I got every single step. I am going to draw the final here for you now, and then I will speed up the drawing sections so they don't actually take as long as they took me to draw. So, when I started, I just started at the top of the list. I need 2 streets that are perpendicular. Now, my paper is a little bit different than yours because I think mine's a 12 by 18 where you have 11 by 17, but just keep that in mind as you're drawing. So 2 streets that are perpendicular. Now, you'll notice that I just drew 2 lines and then drew a 3rd line and erased one. That was my deciding that my sizing was too big, my road was too big, and there was no way I was going to fit everything that I needed to on there if I kept it that big. So be careful with your spacing. If you have a ruler, I think I'm now just going to do this the thickness of the ruler. And there you have 2 lines that are perpendicular. They make that exact box there in the corner. Now, we're not going to go and measure these. So if it's not exactly, if your line wasn't quite straight, that's fine. Okay? What we're looking for is the fact that you tried. I did choose to use a ruler, and as I'm doing this, I'm kind of adapting everything as I go. I think the thickness of my ruler is about perfect for the thickness of my roads. You can choose to do it how you wish. If you don't have a ruler, just do the best you can to draw those straight lines. Now the second thing on my list is 2 streets that are parallel. So I need to draw at least one street that's parallel to one of these. Now in my plan, that was my bottom street. So I'm going to go ahead and draw my bottom street parallel to my top. You'll notice, because of the nature of what I just did, that parallel road also created a perpendicular line down there at the bottom. That happens. Okay. Now I can take care of this the next 2 of these with one road. I need a road that intersects at an obtuse and an acute angle. And if I have it intersect both of my parallel lines there, I get both of those at once. Let me draw it and I'll show you what I mean. So if you look at the way that those intersect, and hopefully this translates as well to you as a, okay, my bottom angle down there is obtuse, which makes my top angle up there acute. And I take care of both of those in one street. Okay, from there, I started getting into my buildings. Now, I did plan something into mind that I kind of want to sketch out a little bit now so that I know I save room for them. In my original drawing, I actually put in little sidewalks so that my final product had sidewalks in my city. You don't have to do that, but I'm going to go ahead and sketch those in real quick now so that they are there so I know how to work around them for my buildings. Alright, so I've drawn in my sidewalks now. You don't have to do sidewalks like I said, but I do challenge you to be as detailed as you can be, just to make these look good. This is pretty much the only thing you're doing this week. Some of us might have thrown in a couple little other things, like my literacy classes has to finish Esperanza Rising. But this is pretty much the only thing you're doing this week besides other little like catch-up things. So I challenge you to make it as detailed as possible. So I drew in little sidewalks. Now I moved into my buildings. Now I personally started when I was making my draft with the equilateral triangle and the scalene triangles. And I put those both, if you'll notice, down on the bottom section of my map there. So I'm going to go ahead and draw those in for you now. So there you have my equilateral and scalene triangles. From there, I moved into the Pentagon, and then that way I just had my 5 quadrilaterals left to do. So I did my Pentagon in the kind of top corner here, so I'll do that now. So there's my building, that's a pentagon. And I'll go ahead and finish up the shapes before I start adding in some of the other details I did. So now I've got my 5 quadrilaterals. Now I told you I did one of each. So, up in this corner here. Now you'll notice, you might have seen with the equilateral triangle and the square, I did actually take the time to measure them to make sure all 3 sides are equal and all 4 sides are exactly the same. If you don't have a ruler or whatever, I mean, that's another one of those things like the 90-degree angle. We're not going to measure it, just do your best to make it look as close as possible. And there we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 quadrilaterals. Now, I for one did go in and add in some more detail, so I'm going to go ahead and do that real quick. I'm just going to take a look at my sketch here because it reminds me what I did. That's why we make it. So for starters there, I just finished filling in my sidewalks there. You'll notice from my Geo City, I even have a circle here. And that's just sidewalk. I don't know, I was trying to fill that space with something a little more fun and interesting. From there, I went ahead and with this space down at the bottom, gave myself a little river with some trees lining it and some other trees throughout my city. Okay, and with that, my drawing of Prattville is more or less done. Now, like I said, okay, we're gonna time travel for just a minute here because there's a part of this that I want to talk about before I start coloring, and technically I'm recording this after I colored. So one of the aspects of this project is a writing assignment. So you'll notice you have this blank sheet here. I've got mine filled in already. So you have to illustrate, write and illustrate a creative story. Now we're not asking much. This isn't supposed to be some huge long story. If you want to make it that, go for it. I've kept mine pretty simple. I followed this. Couple little illustrations like a little cartoon, and then the beginning, middle, end. So, the city decided to host a 5K run. Because I've been trying to be healthier, my wife convinced me to run. Sure, I run. I run like a herd of sloths through peanut butter, but I ran it as only I could. Would you believe it? I didn't win. I took 78th out of 80. That's not last, so that's something, right? Okay, and that's it. Short little story. You've got to write that as part of it, and then go ahead and color your project. That's done. Now, like I said, I challenge you to do as good with this art project as you absolutely can. So my drawing is done. This is Prattville. And maybe I want to write that on here somewhere. You know, maybe I'll get it written in the street down here. Somewhere on here you also want your name, either on the front or on the back, whatever. So just down in this corner here, I'm going to write Prattville. Okay, so down in that bottom corner there, I put my city name, Prattville by Mr. Pratt. Now my final challenge to you, now that you've got it all drawn, is to color it. So I'm going to go ahead and take the time to do that now. I will speed it up so you don't actually have to sit and watch however long this takes me. I'm not entirely sure. And you'll see the final product at the end. There you have it, a finished colored GeoCity. Follow your directions, make sure you check your boxes as you get it done, add as much detail as you can, and I can't wait to see what your guys' look like.